Hello, everyone. My name is Eline Chivot. I am Senior Advisor on Digital Policy at the European People's Party in Brussels. And today, joining us at the GLOBSEC Bratislava Forum 2021 is Brad Smith, President of Microsoft. Brad Smith, it's an honor and a true pleasure to welcome you as part of the GLOBSEC Bratislava Forum 2021. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's nice to see you again. And I feel like we're almost in the same room, but not the way we were the last time I was in Brussels. And I look forward to my next trip.
And we're looking forward to seeing you in Brussels again. And I think I can speak for the entire team when saying that the forum is grateful for this opportunity to hear your insights today on how we can bridge the gap on the digital marketplace through a renewed or refreshed EU-US data agenda. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the use of the technologies. No? We've used it to control the virus and its spread, and also on research, and we've developed those effective vaccines, but also to ensure that people could stay connected and safe online as well at home. So clearly digital was here to help and to avoid further disruptions. And just as clear as how technology is what will help us dealing with the consequences of the pandemic, to reboot our economy and restart, with the recovery, if we allow, of course, the technology to flourish. So we really have this great opportunity to better manage and foster the efficient use and sound deployment of technology. So in this context, there's great momentum, especially this week, when it comes to digital policy in the relations between the US and the EU. And I'd like to start by asking you, why do you think this transatlantic partnership and this dialogue are so important in this? What should be its role in restarting the economy, especially in the digital era? And also, what are the conditions that the US and the EU should enable together in the data economy for us, to be able to use technologies better and quicker, perhaps even to predict future crises?
Well, first of all, I think you framed the issue really well. And just when we think about where we are in the world today, as you put it, the world runs on digital technology, the world runs on data, and that's true for each of the communities and countries in which we live. And it's going to become even more vital each and every year. I think the first thing we have to do is just ensure that the issues around digital technology and data are indeed playing a central, visible, explicit role in the EU-US agenda. We won't deal with these issues well if we don't give them the attention that they deserve. Second, I think we need to recognize that the flow of data across the Atlantic is perhaps even more important than the flow of people. And the flow of people is something we've been suffering from a lack of, and we need to get people and data continuing to move on an ongoing basis. To do that, we need to recognize, I think, a third thing, and that's the critical need to put in place common or at least consistent rules that really respect the values on each side of the Atlantic. Certainly in Europe, data needs to be protected in a manner that is consistent with European values, that conforms with European law. Of course, I like to remind my friends in the United States, where I live, that our American values, frankly, are rooted in European values. They come from Europe. And I think we need to then start to work through the specific challenges and take them one by one, recognizing that some of them are hard, but we need to make progress across the board.
Thank you very much, and let's hope the message will come clear to the US and the EU as they're meeting in Brussels. Now, with this new Biden administration, the transatlantic partnership and relations seem to be back on track, and both partners seem to be rooting for a fresher and stronger dialogue on tech and trade. But let's be honest, there are some unresolved critical issues, let's use that term, when it comes to data governance. So what do you think should be maybe if you have one or two main priorities that both partners must really address to preserve and strengthen their relations and their impact, and maybe some of the concrete ways in which they should do so? Maybe, what kind of data governance or agreements could help us through it?
Well, I do think that things are moving in a common and positive direction, and you see governments on both sides of the Atlantic that want to work together, that want to make things work, and I think that's welcome news for everyone because we all depend on this flow of data. I think the clear starting point, frankly, needs to be to come to terms with the issues that are front and center in the wake of the Schrems II decision. We are dealing with something that is just sort of one step short of a genuine crisis in the ability to move data across the Atlantic, the ability of European companies to do business in the United States, the ability of my company to do business in Europe and support European customers. So I think the sooner we can get something in place that both sides of the Atlantic feel good about, the better. But I also think that we not only need to move fast, we need to act with a level of ambition. The issues that we're seeing around data and privacy are obviously sort of going around and around again. We've been at this now for multiple years as the safe harbor was replaced by the privacy shield, and now we're at it again. And I think what it really requires is that we put in place a longer term, deeper and more stable agreement between governments. I think this can build on the statutory foundation in the Cloud Act that was passed by the US Congress in 2017 that creates the legal authority for the executive branch to enter into an agreement with, say, European governments, to negotiate with the European Commission. And I think we need to look even more broadly than that. I think that we may have a period of time where the US has to consider some statutory changes, but we just have to rebuild the foundation so that there is the kind of trust that the transatlantic relationship really requires.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we will have heard from the Commission and the US administration that there's definitely a handshake that's really about to materialize through this US-EU Tech and Trade Transatlantic Council. And there are many areas where both can collaborate. I have a question actually still on this, because, you know, in your wonderful book, Tools and Weapons, which you published in 2019, you wrote, to regulate technologies that are bigger than themselves, governments will need to work together. And indeed, there are various areas for mutual engagement on which, it would be critical for the EU and the US to work together. It would be mutually beneficial in order to pool resources, share each other's assets and strength, and we have many. But it will also be indispensable for our respective resilience in our agenda. I know the EU is rooting for strategic autonomy, for instance. Now, in the pandemic, we've seen how our critical systems and our infrastructure have come under attack, with disrupted operations, especially towards vital infrastructure like hospitals. What are some of the ways in which you believe the tech industry, and in particular Microsoft, can play a supportive role in ensuring, more resilience in cybersecurity globally, but also, of course, acting as a bridge as part of the transatlantic relations?
Well, I think it's a really interesting question. And one of the things I would just start with is, at a time when there is rightly so much discussion about digital sovereignty, we should recognize that there is no digital sovereignty without cybersecurity. And we really need to strengthen cybersecurity protection around the world and across the board. Certainly, I think that responsibility in many ways is on our shoulders at Microsoft and other tech companies. We need to keep strengthening the features that provide cybersecurity protection. And I think even more than that, we need to keep making these features easier for organizations and companies and governments and individuals to use. The second thing that I just think has been so noteworthy over the last 6 months is that every time we've really dug deep to understand what happened with the cyber attack, and we really worked with customers to see what had happened within their networks, what we found was a common trait. People became victims in large part because they did not necessarily deploy all of the protections that exist already. So I think we need to help governments and businesses, large and small, NGOs, use a short but critical list of features. If people are going to run their software on a server in their own building, they have to be patching the server. Better yet, they should probably move to the cloud so they don't have to keep patching their machines, and a company that runs cloud services will do so instead. It's just an imperative that we have customers that are using anti-malware and using it on all of their machines, that they're using multi-factor access, that they're ensuring their network administrators follow what's called least privilege access, meaning they only have access to the part of the network that they need to work on. Yet they're running on the principles of what we call a zero trust environment. In other words, run your network on the assumption that someday someone will get inside it, but don't let them run wild when they're there. So tie down your devices with the kinds of services that we and others run. And perhaps above all else, use the authentication keys, the keys that are used, the password, so to speak, by your administrators to manage and access your email, your documents. Store them in a secure location, either on a secure hardware device or in the cloud. If there's one thing that I think so many of the attendees of this meeting share in common, is that frankly, almost all of you are high on the list of priorities for an attack. We follow this every day from Russia, from Iran, from China, from North Korea, and people who work in government, people who work for think tanks, people who work at NGOs. You need to think about this because, believe me, unfortunately, our adversaries are thinking about you.
Thank you so much, Brett Smith. Yeah, it's been a difficult year for cybersecurity, but I think both the EU and the US are taking it seriously. I actually believe the US has elevated cyber hacks to the same level as terrorism in terms of the threat. And I liked how you recalled the role of tech industry in this by making sure all these agreements don't remain just a political high-level exercise. So thank you very much for all these insights and for being with us today. It was a privilege.
Well, thank you. It's a great conversation, and it's great to be here with everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to you all for following us. Now we're going back to Bratislava. I'd like to wish everyone on behalf of the great GLOBSEC team a wonderful event, and I hope you will enjoy taking part in those insightful and stimulating conversations. We hope to see you soon. Thank you.